Welcome! You're watching the Thrift Store Rundown, where we bring Hollywood home on a budget. Journalism, as you and I know it today, would be considered a three-ring circus of stupidity. The three rings being NBC, ABC, and CBS. The less I say about Fox News, the better. And CNN ain't no better. PBS is really not among all of this because the PBS NewsHour, in my opinion, is far superior. Hashtag news without noise. But if we are going to discuss one of the three wise men in broadcast journalism amongst the three big network news broadcast groups, that would be again NBC, ABC, and CBS, I'm going to choose CBS and discuss a man who, like the other two, was brought up in a time when journalism was real. It was never repugnant nor fabricated, and it wasn't afraid to dish out blows as well as take them head on. This is Dan Rather Outspoken, My Life in the News, co-authored by Digby Deal. This copy includes a new afterword from Dan Rather, the afterword being CBS purchasing a controlling interest in Access TV. Renamed after Mark Cuban, the owner of Access TV, sold HDNet, the former name, to Ryan Seacrest, a part of the company anyway, to Ryan Seacrest. And Mark, shame on you for doing that. As we all know, Ryan Seacrest ruins everything! Anyway, if you're having deja vu, it's because that I bought the audiobook first. Read the book and then listen to the audiobook, or do it simultaneously, and you got a one-of-a-kind experience. I got this for $4.99. This is from Grand Central Publishing. This memoir lives up to its title in spades. It is a New York Times bestseller, so it must. Retail price, if we can find it. Actually, it's not listed. This is a barcode label that must be covering up the retail price because I don't see it at all. Anyway, for half a century, Dan Rather has covered the major news stories of our time. He was the network face of TV journalism as the anchor of the CBS Evening News for nearly 25 years, the longest tenured anchor, the longest to assume the role of managing editor over there. At the end of his tenure, he became part of the news himself. Now, for the first time, Dan tells the real story of his final months at CBS, Rather Outspoken. In this candid, riveting book, Dan recounts his removal from the anchor chair in the wake of the controversy surrounding the story of George W. Bush and the Texas Air National Guard. He also exposes the frantic and secret behind-the-scenes machinations that followed. At the same time, he looks back over his entire career, from his boyhood in Houston, Texas, to his coverage of every U.S. president since Eisenhower. Along the way, he sounds an urgent call for more investigative journalists and more in-depth reporting, even in the face of what he calls the corporatization, politicization, and trivialization of the news. Throughout his career, Dan has been dedicated to the two bedrock principles of journalism. First, find out the truth, and then tell people about it. And Rather Outspoken, he follows those principles and opens up as never before. It all makes for a compelling, eye-opening read. One that Publishers Weekly calls a riveting and revelatory autobiography that can also serve as a valuable textbook for anyone studying journalism. Kirkus Reviews raves a muckraker's delight, an engaging grab bag, part folksy homage to roots, part expose of institutional wrongdoing, and part manifesto for a truly free press. Some of the issues that he covers in this book will be highlighted in video today from Dan himself, starting with New York, civil rights, and a tragedy of 1963 in Dallas.
I've never underestimated how much danger television crews and reporters were under in the early stages of civil rights movement, I would say particularly from about 1960-61 through about 1964-65. I remember quite well, we had worked out a plan when Governor Wallace stood in the schoolhouse door, where the cameraman was going to film a short piece at the beginning of this. We would rush it off and get it back to where we could process it off campus. And our plan was the cameraman would hand me a can of film. We had hired a guy with a motorcycle. I was to jump on the back of the motorcycle and he was to race to the point where we could process the film and put the film on a projector and send it to New York. And we had told the guy on the motorcycle, we're competitive here. I want you to get to our processing and transfer point as quickly as possible. He took off and literally my legs were sticking out like this. And he went literally well over 75 miles an hour through the streets of Tuscaloosa. And I said to myself, you know, this is probably how it ends for me. A lady of a certain age driving an old Buick is going to pull out of one of these side streets, slam into us, and this is the way it's going to end. Fortunately for me, she didn't. We got the film back, we processed the film, and then we put it on a projector, and I did a voiceover of the film live from just off the campus.
There's also a photo incident here, which is lovely to look at, and around here, mandatory to feature. It has Dan's upbringing as a Texan, a photo from his brief stint in the Marine Corps, photos of his family life, photos from the launch of Dan Rather Reports on Access TV. He highlights several noteworthy stories from the program, my favorite being Portland, Oregon. It's explained in detail toward the end of this book. The next issue that we're going to cover is Presidents I Have Known Part 1. That's Chapter 5. This is a two-part chapter, with Chapter 6 being the second half of presidents that Dan Rather has known and or interviewed. One of them being President Lyndon Johnson, who assumed office after the monumental tragedy, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas in the motorcade.
There wasn't much time for family when you were covering the Johnson presidency. It was not unusual to be in the Oval Office talking with the president 5, 6, 7 times a day, and you're swamped. You're right hard up against deadline pressure, and the press secretary would say, the president has called a session in his office. Be there in 45 seconds, he said. And I'm saying to myself, I still have to write for radio and try to get home before the kids go to bed. President Johnson was aware of this, and he would sometimes write notes to a correspondent's wife or to one of your kids. If you happen to say, my son is playing in a basketball game this afternoon, or my daughter has a school test this afternoon, he'd say, you know, I hope the basketball game went well, or I hope you did well on your test today. Sorry your father had to work late, that kind of thing. He didn't do it all the time with everybody, but he did do it.
Have a look here at this photo on the bottom left. There he is with a few other wise men in journalism. Okay, wise men here. Walter Cronkite, one of the founding fathers of CBS News, and one of the founding fathers of good, honest journalism. There's Tom Brokaw from the NBC Nightly News. And of course there is the liar, Brian Williams, Tom Brokaw's successor. Not wisely chosen. Although, Brian did do a pretty good job for his decade. But when you lie, you lie. And when you're in a position like Brian, or Dan, or Walter, or Tom, or in this case today, Norval O'Donnell, Lester Holt, or David Muir, any line is not acceptable, and you will be held accountable for it, and you will have the gavel thrown down upon you hard by management, as well as your respective audience. Another chapter of note, Afghanistan.
We all knew it was going to be dangerous. But if we had known how dangerous it was going to be inside, I would have had to think very carefully, not about myself, but about, I took a producer, a cameraman, and a soundman with me, all of whom had families. There was a moment in Afghanistan. We'd been in for a number of days, and we got very close to Jalalabad, where the Kunar River meets the Jalalabad River. And we were told by those who were helping us inside, we can get you deeper, we can get you north of here. To get across the river, what we're going to have to do is float you across with your equipment. And the best way to do that is with the carcass of an animal. And I remember thinking, boy, I'd like to get deeper inside the country. But I had the responsibility of this crew that I'm traveling with, and I thought about my own family. And one of the members of the crew didn't swim, and I was picturing the sheer terror he would have of hooking him up with the carcass of a dead animal to conceal himself and to conceal the equipment and try to cross this fairly wide, swift river, and made the decision all things considered, my own family and the families of these people, it's a no-go for us.
He also dishes out rules for interviews, the Dan Rather way. 1. Preparation is key. 2. Listening is almost as important as asking. 3. Prioritize your questions. 4. Pay attention to nonverbal cues. And 5. Understand the power of pauses. Here are some other topics covered in Dan Rather Outspoken. Now, if you see toward the end of the book, Dan Rather, CBS News, wasn't really just a one-word sentence. It was his entire way of life for all of his time at CBS News. But you know what? His entire way of life can be summed up in just one word. Not Dan Rather, CBS News.
Dan Rather reporting.
And now, not so much reporting as he is advocating for stronger reporting, for journalists with spines and backbones who aren't afraid to dish out punches in the name of good, honest journalism and honesty to the viewers, and in the name of seeking the truth. It gets a strong 4.5 out of 5 from me. This guy has a hell of a lot of courage when it comes to investigative journalism, and really journalism of any kind, and he wants to share that journalism with everyone who wants to follow in his footsteps.
To a nation still nursing a broken heart for what happened here in 2001, and especially to those who found themselves closest to the events of September 11th. To our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines in dangerous places. To those who have endured the tsunami, and to all who have suffered natural disasters and who must now find the will to rebuild. To the oppressed and to those whose lot it is to struggle in financial hardship or in failing health. To my fellow journalists in places where reporting the truth means risking all. And to each of you, courage.
That's the way it was. That's the way it is. That's the way it should be. And that should always be part of our world. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the flip side.